Well, here's my venerable Marlin 60. It's had a lot of rounds through it over many years, and it does like to be kept reasonably clean. The problem is the powder residue from 22 is notoriously dirty and tends to gum things up and prejudice function. First and foremost, let me just mention here, slide is locked back, and you must check for an empty chamber. Safety is paramount. Now there are two screws that hold the furniture on, and we don't need all this stuff if we're going to do a clean-up. So I've already undone these screws. We take out the one from the front here, put that aside, and then there's one at the rear of the trigger guard. Not this one in the woodwork, it's the one in the trigger guard. We take that out, put that aside. Now I just ease the woodwork off, put that to one side. I might mention also, by the way, that I've already taken out the magazine tube. We don't need that. So this is essentially a two-part operation. That's about all there is to it. We have a lower section here which contains the trigger group inside, and that's the first item we're going to take off. And now that we're proven safe and clear, pull back the slide release lever, let the slide go forward. That takes some of the tension off the mainspring and makes getting this out a little bit easier. One reason, by the way, for having had this at the halfway point when we started was so that we know that the hammer is cocked. This job wants to be done with the hammer fully back and cocked, otherwise it makes it more difficult. So, stage one, locate at the rear here a pin. It's a plastic pin. It's bifurcated. Mine is pretty worn, so it hasn't got much spring left in it, but you might need to use some pliers to squeeze the end to start it going through. Now, before I take that pin out, I'm going to squeeze between the top here and the bottom with fingers and thumb, then remove the pin. Now slowly take my pressure off, and the whole of that lower assembly moves out. It's located at the front here on a pin. Two lugs engage on a pin. Pull that rearwards and downwards, and there you've got it. Alright, so this section here comprises a recoil buffer. There is the hammer, springs and such like inside the trigger group, and down this end we've got the ammunition feed section, which also wants to be kept clean. The whole of this really wants to be cleaned up with a toothbrush and cleaner, and then very lightly oiled. I'll just have a slightly closer look at the internals there. There's quite a bit of powder residue in this, which you may or may not see, but this is the trigger group. All this lot here. Springs, pins, circlips. Not very much fun to take apart, and certainly for this job we're not going to do it. And then looking again at the top side, there's the hammer, well cocked back, and this is again the feed section where the rounds come in from the tube. That's pretty much all we need to know about this part. Don't forget the ubiquitous toothbrush for some of the cleaning operation. Now the next step, stage 2, is to take out the slide, and to do this I found a popsicle stick is ideal. I'm going to pull back slightly on the slide lever, bolt lever, whichever you want to call it. Pull that back just about 1/8 of an inch, put the popsicle stick in between that and the breech face, and then apply a little bit of leverage, push against it and towards you, and the slide lever will come out very easily. You'll see that there's a cutaway on the top of the slide to take the slide lever. Put that to one side. Now we've got the slide lever out, so what I'm going to concentrate on here is getting the slide out all the way, but bearing in mind the fact that the recoil spring is exerting a lot of pressure on it. So I pull it towards myself, rearwards and towards myself, until it comes out without too much drama. There's the recoil spring, complete with guide rod. A little bit of lube on there, that needs some lube, not too much. Now this is an important area we've got to look at here, and I think we'll go in for a closer look. This area of the slide is pretty important. Let's move in closer. Now I'm going to try and keep this in frame. There's the cutout which takes the slide lever. You can see it just sits across there when it's normally in position. I'm just wanting to point out this area, this shiny portion. This is the main part that runs on the area inside here, up the top, and that is, to my mind, the most important area to have some lubrication. Then the other thing is to look at the bolt face. That is an extractor claw, spring loaded. That is the other extractor claw, also spring loaded. They need to be sharp without a broken tip, otherwise you'll get a malfunction. Now this area where the case of the ammunition sits must be kept clear as well, otherwise the rim area will not nestle in fully, and that would mean that the firing pin here might just not give a decent enough hit. The discoloration around here, at a pinch with enough work you might get rid of that, but it's a very long-term build-up of a soot discoloration and I shouldn't worry about it. Okay, so check for cleanliness here, make sure these extractor claws are okay. One other thing, whilst I've got this to this stage, the chamber down here, there's the chamber, either side is a recess, and that recess on each side accepts the projecting extractor claws. Now it is possible that over a long period of time that these can get choked up with crud. If there was enough in there, it could actually prevent the slide coming fully into battery, and so of course you won't get reliable function. The case must be fully chambered and in battery for the firing pin to actuate the primer and the rim. And whilst on this view, the slide runs on these two areas in here. Again, this is to my mind the most important for lubrication. Well, that basically is it. If you've done all your cleanup and you're happy with the removal of crud, all you need to do is put it back together, which in essence is the reverse of what we've just done. So let's just run through that. One or two points to make mention of. We want to put the spring back into the hole in the slide, but when you put this back you do not want to damage this area which has got no support. So what I tend to do is to put the end of the spring guide rod into the recess back here, and then my trick is to pinch the guide rod and spring against the side and push carefully in line to get the spring started into the slide, and then place it part the way back. That then really is the worst bit over. We've now just got to get the slide back in place, so we'll get the popsicle stick out again and just work the slide back in about there, And then we take the slide lever, put that down over the top of the groove, and as long as you can see what I'm doing here, just push that in, work it in gently, bit at a time, and there you are, it snaps into place. Having done that, I'm just going to put my thumb down here to stop this buckling, and I'm going to push the slide back a couple of times. Yep, that's working fine, just to make sure there's no obstruction. That's probably the worst bit over, and now we just finish off by taking the lower section, assuming again we've cleaned as much as we need to clean, lubed as much as we need to lube, not to excess. We put the lugs on the front over the pin, and then we're going to push this in so that the hole lines up for the pin. Take the pin, work it through, feel it through, and there it is, back in place. And that, folks, is about it. So all we're left with now is just to put the woodwork back on, and I push the slide back to the halfway point for safety's sake, and then we take the furniture, ease that back into place, take the two screws that we took out earlier, one goes in the front there, that long one goes in the rear of the trigger guard. All we've got to do then is do them up, and that's it. Not that bad, but just one or two things that want to be looked at carefully so you don't get into trouble, don't damage the spring, and don't over lubricate. But that's just me. Hope it helps a bit anyway.